Hello again, Eric with Courage and Conviction. Today, I want to talk a little off topic. And again, remember, what we do here in this podcast is Section 88, 77 to 81. The idea is that we learn more than just the spiritual, that we bring it back to spiritual. Everything is spiritual in the end, right? So I'm talking about more of secular things that we talk about here, but bringing it back to spiritual with the primary emphasis in trying to help people overcome these challenging times today, challenges both in and out of the church, and yet save their testimonies, hold on to testimonies, or come back to their testimonies, like I myself had to do, and Jeff, who often does this podcast with me. Tonight, I want to talk a little bit, though, and lay out some of the mainstream ideas that are being adopted in society, and kind of the point where the corner we're being pushed into right now, and a choice that we're most likely going to have to face sooner or later, and much sooner than I think many of us want to recognize and accept. Now, I'm not saying this or even going into these things to try to place fear in people. That's the last thing I want to do, because that's what Satan does. That's what these governments do. That's what tyrannical type governments and those who want to take your freedoms, they do so by fear mongering. What I want to do is I want to help people understand what they can do, or what's coming at least, so you can start prepared for that. And then give you the best understanding that we have at this time. And as we progress in greater understanding, share that with you as well, how we get around or through, over, or under that, right? That's the purpose of this channel. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump into this video. It's called Divide and Rule by Vandana Shiva. I believe she's native of India. She is well, let her tell the story. She's going to talk a little bit here. Now, I'm just going to let you know right at the top that I think that what's taking place and what she's going to describe is very true in the sense of what is how society is being captivated and being lured and being divided, right? But I also look at her as being the bait and switch. And, my basic studies of quantum physics help me understand that everything's interrelated. I get that, but I don't think so to the point as she is trying to make here, and using quantum physics and science to try to actually persuade an agenda and fear behind that. You're going to see where the fear mongering comes in here. Fear behind that. But this is a reality of where we're headed right now. And she's correct in what she's saying, that many of us will be disposable. Our lives, everything about us, like many were with Hitler or with Stalin or Mao, if you will, continuing on, right? There's many out there that can show they did not care about Xi Jinping today, certain human sex or people, if they don't need them anymore. And that's how Satan rules. He wants us to die in our sins and without knowledge of our Savior. So let's listen to this. You're going to see the double-edged sword here, the deception. And we'll talk about that and unpack a little bit. Walter, go ahead and start with the video.
The way you design the world in your mind is the way you relate to it in the real world. And when you design it as dead matter just to be exploited, you will exploit it. When you design it without any understanding of limits, you will violate the planetary limits. When you design it with deep recognition of interconnectedness, you will nurture those relationships. And this basic recognition is what I drew from my learnings in quantum theory, that non-locality, non-separation, interconnectedness, that is the nature of reality. But we have a design in the paradigm of mechanistic thought which didn't evolve, it was imposed. That mechanistic thought is based first on the assumption that we are separate from nature And nature is constituted of discrete particles, separate from each other, who can only relate through violence, through force, through action by contact. In the quantum world, there is no separability. My thesis was on non-locality in quantum theory. Everything is interconnected. There are no fixed essentialized qualities that have been built into the way people are looked at, nature is looked at. Potential is the defining quality in the quantum world. And because it's about potential, it's also about uncertainty. The mechanical world
Let's talk about this for a minute.
is based.
Okay, what we're hearing right now is a lot of quantum theory, right? And she's relating a lot of she's using this to try to help build up for a point she's going to make later at the end of this video. It's not a very long video. It's only 12 minutes. So bear with us in this. I want you to hear this because she's setting this up, and it's very important because this is what colleges are teaching, what our youth, our young adults are learning, okay? And this is something I think that we need to comprehend ourselves so we can help them. Now, what she does talk about here about potential and uncertainty, now, there is a correlation there, right? With our purpose for being here and Heavenly Father's plan of joy. In that being that we are here to fulfill our measure. In other words, to achieve our potentials. And in so doing, though, there's an uncertainty of whether we will or we won't. And that's all called agency. That's agency. Right? So that's kind of important that we see that underlying factor there of agency, even in quantum theory. However, the agency she's going to talk about is going to be an agency that's going to be introduced as like the 2030 agenda, 2050 agenda, that basically takes away a lot of the freedoms that we have today, so that we can all be one, as her point she's trying to make here, be one and unified as one body. Now we hear that at church too, right? That we should be one, we should be unified, and yet so we know there's truth in that, and there's reality to that. But we start listening to this. This is why we got to be very, very careful, and why we need to do our own research as well, and not just sit at the pulpit here. Yeah, I need to be one, because this is what's going to be taught to our kids in college as well about what being one is. It really means, if you will, and you're going to see here, it means giving up, everybody giving up what they believe in or want and desire for one set goal, and that is to save the planet Earth for future posterity and from our own personal destructions. Meaning that we're going to give up what we have known now as our rights. There'll be no more rights. And in that all inclusiveness will come to where there will be no right to religion. There'll be chosen religions. When I spent time in Cuba, I was doing some studies in Cuba. I had the opportunity to go there for a while. And when I did spend time there studying the religions, those were religions by the government. If anybody wanted to practice being LDS or true Christian or meaning the Christian faiths, or even Latter-day Saint faith, meaning, and I say true Christian because in Cuba the religions are government based, and they kind of have a mock type of a Christianity, if you will, sort of, kind of. But at least they did when I was there. There were 3 religions they could choose from. But those religions are not religions, are not anything that we would are allowed to come up with through divine revelation or inspiration. So there's no divine guidance in what she's trying to say here. Everything would be run and done by the human mind and human beings, and therefore we would be one because the laws would obligate us to be one, sacrificing everything that we would know today as our agency and our freedoms to be one with the land. Obviously, there's going to have to be an elite people, a group of people that would govern us, and they obviously can't be elected because you can't take the chance that we would go backwards and allow freedom to come back again. So that will be something that would completely be out of the question. So just pay attention as we listen here. Let's carry on with the video, Walter. Go ahead, please.
Based on a false illusion of determinateness, certainty. And in the quantum world, we know we cannot get rid of uncertainty, the uncertainty principle of Heisenberg. To this is linked to the 4th principle No excluded middle, no duality, no either or. In the quantum world, it's and. In the mechanistic world, you can either be a wave or a particle. In the quantum world, you have potential to be both, and they're complementary.
Let's stop it for a minute, Walter.
When you realize.
Now, here we go. See, there is no duality. There's only the middle, right? In other words, that we all give up. Everybody gives up what they're standing for, being on the right or on the left, and everybody just meets in the middle. Now, Stephen Covey, his book for 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, great book. If you haven't read that, I highly recommend that book. Beck, I'll try to put a link down below. And while you're down below looking for that, do us a favor if you like this kind of content. Do us a favor, give us a thumbs up so we get the message out to everybody, helps the algorithms, and subscribe. It's free. And then as we get videos come up, you'll see, you'll get notified. So let's look at this. We have left or right, and we want to try to find the middle. Okay, well, maybe a middle ground right now is not so bad, but when we give a middle ground, as Stephen Covey taught, when you give a middle ground, each side is giving up something, right? Usually giving up half of what they want. So it's a lose-lose deal. And in the end, only resentment arises. And I do believe that that's still a true human scientific psychological outcome of what would take place if we all just gave up right now, everybody, and met in the middle. There would just be resentment later from both sides, most likely, because one could not do what they feel that needs really to be fulfilled. We're going to just do this for apparently a higher cause. It's called synergy. I'm sorry, that's not called synergy. Synergy then would be this, the higher cause. I'm jumping ahead of myself. We would come together and create a whole new, right? A whole new principle. There is no left, no right. There's a new principle. And that would then elevate us to both of us getting what we want. But the problem now is that with the red and the blue separations politically, they're so extreme that I don't see how anybody. Now, if I'm wrong, put a comment down below, please. Make it cordial, make it educative, right? Educational. That's what this is all about. I don't see how, though, we can meet in the middle. The divide is so great. However, what she's going to say here suggests that we do. Now, how do we meet in the middle? What would be meeting in the middle? Okay, we give up, for example, we would give up the church, each one of our churches. One church would stay. One Christian church would stay. One Islamic church would stay. Or I should say one Christian faith would stay, right? And then you'd have one Islamic faith would stay. And then you'd have maybe some witchcraft, like you see a lot in South America, Latin America, and Cuba, right? So you have one of those type of religions, a black magic type of religion. See, those are the 3 that government sponsors. And those are the 3 that government allows you. What you don't have is freedom of choice, freedom of speech. You're also told what you can teach and not teach there. That's the means of giving up, right? Because we couldn't teach then that celestial glory was only given to a man and a woman. Couldn't teach that. You can't teach certain things or sins because that's considered offensive to other people, and therefore then that's overstepping that line and not staying in the middle, right? So the resentment would come because truth could never be determined. Does that make sense? So when we talk about the mechanical, we often need that mechanical to work through. The false illusions are what we need to work through. That's called freedom. That's freedom of choice. Now we try to narrow down those false illusions and not just be big dreamers, but we want to dream because dreaming is part of achieving goals and wanting to become somebody. You dream it. I mean, what's the difference between a dream and a goal? Another Covey teaching. The difference between a dream and a goal, the only difference is one's written down with a plan. When you write it down, you put it in writing. This is my dream, and this is how I'm going to achieve my dream. And if you want to just be basic, you can do a thing like every 5 years or every 3 years. This is how close I'm going to get and what I'm going to achieve every 3 years or every 5 years. I'm going to get this and this done, that and that done, right? Point being. So the quantum of just harmonizing comes with a sacrifice not necessarily a good sacrifice, a sacrifice of good to adopt half of bad. Make sense? This is a part of the yin yang that's the black wanting to carry over the black. In other words, we'll put more black in the white. Continue on, Walter, with the video, please.
That the world is one interconnected whole, you also realize that what appears different is actually different expressions of an interconnected reality.
Okay.
For the first time in human history.
Let's stop the video here, Walter. So what you're saying here then, so let's just break this unpack that thing. So what appears to be different is actually different. Okay. It's just actually a different expression of interconnected reality. And so that's almost like subjective realism, right? What's real to you is real to you, what's real to me is real to me. We're all interrelated here. And we just observe it different ways, and we're just going to have, we're just going to coexist and tolerate that with each other. Sounds beautiful. And to a certain degree, you can do that. But I argue, if you're not marching under the same north, you have two different norths, you soon become enemies, or you divide. And that division causes friction. That friction causes enemies, etc. Because you got to watch yourself then, right? To be considered enemy. You can love your enemy all you want to. But that idea in itself is a dangerous idea. Walter, carry on, please.
Technology in the hands of the billionaires becomes the new civilizing mission for humanity. That's true. Illusions about the big technology firms is they create. They extract. They don't create anything. Software programmers create the platforms.
This is a true point here.
That they use. Even Bill Gates didn't really write his basic program. It was some professor, 2 math professors in Dartmouth College who did the basic program. They have posited themselves as inventors. When basically, we've done a new report, it's because Bill Gates announced a new project called Ag One. All agriculture will be one agriculture controlled by him. Where does he set up the office of Ag One? In Missouri, where Monsanto's headquarters is. But we watch what's going on in India, and we pieced it together. So basically, he's financing a lot of data mining from farmers, which will then be packaged back as big data and sold back to the farmers. But this is exactly what happened in your 2016 elections. Facebook sold data to Cambridge Analytica. So when you think of why are the kind of leaders that we have getting created, it's very important to remember that in these 25 years of corporate deregulation of commerce, you basically have a lot of money in the hands of very few people. And they then are the ones investing in all the companies. The companies are not independent companies anymore. They're basically billionaire money managed by the investment funds like BlackRock and Vanguard, etc.
Good point there too.
They also know that everywhere.
She's right on there. I was just making the comment there, Walter, that she was just right on. And it's the point she's trying to do, but these last points she's trying to make about Bill Gates and about commerce and the billionaires and the control, that is very true. And this is where you're seeing a new type of fascism where the governments are sucking in, and this has come through these crises that we've had, right? Including 2008, the last one where everybody was shut down. Those crises, all that comes through. This has been slowly, well, I shouldn't even say slowly, but this has been, bit by bit, big chunk by big chunk, advancing this direction. And when you had the lockdowns these 2 years, and you had everything shut down, you had a great wealth distribution. And you made the middle class poorer and the wealthier class became wealthier. Now the top 2% hold more wealth than all the middle class in the United States of America. Didn't used to be that way. But in the last 3 years, it's changed that way. So you're seeing this happen. So she's making a true point there. Well, Walter, carry forward.
People are on the streets. Just look at this year. Show me a country where there weren't protests. Chile, Beirut, Hong Kong, everywhere. So how do you deal with the rising demand for a change?
Okay, stop for a minute.
We threw out the East India Company in 18.
Okay, what she's doing, she's laying the groundwork. She's laying the groundwork of the reality of what's taking place. These are all true points. Okay. She laid out the idea of quantum theory prior. And I do have to feel that's her interpretation of quantum theory. But all the same, this is the kind of doctrine that they're being taught in the universities. And so this is going to lead us all into the same concept of climate change, the whole fear-mongering concept behind climate change. Whether you like or dislike climate change, I strongly suggest you do research on climate change to see just how real it actually is. And I'm saying that meaning that I should put this real, how it's being abused and how unreal it actually is. It's not a true issue. Is it something we should always be aware of and take care of? Yes. And can we do better at that right now? Yes. But is it necessary to go to all these different extremes? For example, battery power. I'm just going to throw this out there. You can put your comments down below, please, and just hear me on this. We're going to go battery power with all these vehicles. What do we do with that? You used to get 300,000 miles of vehicle, a gas engine or a diesel engine. You get about 300,000 miles, right? Average. Diesel, you can get a little bit more. Now, though, with these electric cars, you get about 150,000 miles. That's some of the best ones. And then you have to get a new car, right? 300,000 you get for gas or diesel. You have to basically get a new engine, at least in your vehicle, in your car. Same with a vehicle with electrical, it's 150,000. So it's half the distance you get from it, but it costs more money. So what do you say? We say, well, the battery goes out 150,000. Okay, so what do? I buy a new battery. Well, that new battery costs almost the same as buying a whole new car. I got a question for everybody. We're talking about contamination. What the heck are we going to do with all these solar panels and all these batteries? Has somebody got an answer for me there? Because I can't find one. And nobody's offering a solution. And I'll tell you this much. I went to a solar panel seminar last year on how to install solar panels. And this guy was saying, look, don't go out and buy new solar panels. We have so many used solar panels that we can't get rid of because the state doesn't allow us to dispose of them because they don't know how to dispose of them yet. So they're forcing us to go a direction, right, that the grid is not even established to do, nor do we have any idea of what we're going to do with this waste in 20 years. It's not even being laid out, not even being dealt with. It's just being pushed, this whole agenda. So we need to ask those questions, right? So she's laying things out right now. She's laying things out for that whole idea of coming together to save the planet, the whole global warming, the whole planet, climate change idea. Now, she won't say it. She's not going to say it, but she's laying it out, and she's going to tell you right now what's going on with all these elites, the World Economic Forum elites, the Bill Gates, the Klaus Schwabs, the Zuckerbergs, etc., and those puppets that play along with this game, these secret combinations, as we know them to be, right? Remember, Louisiana passed a law, I believe it was Louisiana, a couple weeks ago, recognizing who these secret combinations are. Finally, I've been trying to shout this out for the last 3 years. Finally, this was exposed to me, and I learned this. And I've been trying to share what I was taught. World Economic Forum, United Nations, World Health Organizations, and then they have their policing powers. And they have other branches. You can go into the banking system, etc. But those are, like the IMF, for example, those are the heads of the secret combinations right now. They're non-elected officials, by the way, and they are implementing law and policy for all of us to follow, even here in the United States of America, where we thought we were free. And this is where she's going to come to. We will be disposable. We will be going the same direction. And if we don't unite, like she's going to say, we will be disposable. Our jobs will be disposed of. AI will take over. And that is true. So at some point, we need to unite. But do we unite like she's proposing? It's fear-mongering here to get us to jump in and say, okay, fine, we'll give up our religion and we'll just take the state religion so we can live on, our posterity can live on. Right? Let's carry on, Walter. Pay attention and listen here, please. Carry on, Walter.
1957. The Crown took over. They established a policy called divide and rule. And then they started to divide Hindus and Muslims, because Hindus and Muslims had stood together to defend their land, their livelihoods, their freedom. It took from 1857 to about 1920 for all kinds of means, census, fake identity, because, people in India would say, I'm a Hindu and a Muslim, because they'd go to mosques and they'd go to temples. And when they'd be asked, who are you? They'd say, I'm a gardener, I'm a blacksmith. For them, the religious part was very, very secondary. Their occupation was their main identity, the place where they came from, the community they came from. And this took so long. This is what led to our partition. And that partition is still being played out. It's an incomplete project. So divide and rule becomes a necessity for the 1% to continue to hold on to power. What are the economic policies?
So there you're going to see now the blue and the red. She's showing that, and it's exactly right. We're just the monkeys, but we're divided. And the whole idea of this racial thing, the LGBTQ, all of this is just a play. These people are all being played as puppets. Even these immigrants coming across are all being played as puppets. Now, are the consequences real? Oh, they're very real. Very, very real. They need them to be real. So that fear maintains that division, right? And this is the reality that I want to show. This is what Satan is doing. This is what Satan did to us in the pre-existence. Remember, it wasn't just the valiant and the weak that decided. It wasn't, I guess you could say the red and the blue in the pre-existence. There were those who stood for freedom, who stood along Father, carrying that red flag, if you will, right? And there were those who wanted to support Satan, want to support socialist agendas and Marxist type agendas, and that they carried that blue flag. There were extremes. They're very extremes on that. This was a battle of ideologies like we have today, right now, and pressure, right? It's interesting to think about that, because meaning that in the presence of our Heavenly Father, we still have agency, right? Have to be. Otherwise, how would you have this division pop up even there? And so, but see what Father did. He didn't tolerate it. He cast them out. After a period, he cast them out. And I have a feeling the same thing is going to happen in the church here on the earth today. There'll be a period, the law is being tolerated, then there's going to be a casting out. I think there's going to be a self-casting out first before there's an actual casting out. I think most of that will come as we will do too when we face our judgment, as we know which kingdom we feel comfortable in, and we decide where we want to go. It's all agency based, and we won't choose anything higher because we know we can't. We won't feel comfortable there. So let's keep going here. She's laying this out. She's nailing this right now on the division. Divide by race, divide by culture, right? Just divide and you can conquer. Walter, go ahead.
Being pushed while people are divided. Because that's really the agenda. In 1906, when this divide and rule and apartheid was being put in place, apartheid hadn't been named apartheid then. It was only named as a system in 1948. But in 1906, the British wanted to turn Indians in South Africa into second-class citizens. So they wrote an Indian Act. And Indians had to register on race, and they had to carry their identities all the time. And a lot of what's happening right now in India around this identity issue is related to that history of the Satyagraha. But most importantly, any police officer could enter your house at any time and demand your papers. You couldn't trade locally, you couldn't practice professions. And so the people said, we would rather die. This refusal to cooperate with unjust law is what Gandhi called Satyagraha, as a duty of truth. He was inspired by Thoreau, who refused to pay the poll tax here against the slave system. He inspired Martin Luther King. And the civil rights movement is very much inspired by Gandhi. But it is when King started to take up the economic justice and economic equality issues, that's when he was assassinated. Because the part is, you can talk in very sweet ways about civil liberties, but you don't touch economic justice. And the economy is, for me, it's a double violence, because the origin of the word, the meaning of the word economy, comes from oikos, our home. The Aristotelian Aristotelian name is oikonomia, the art of living. And when you turn the art of living into the art of money making, which Aristotle called chrematistics, then you have to practice violence against the earth and violence against others, destroy their livelihoods, destroy their freedoms, take away their resources. So the violence is multiple. And I look into the future.
Okay, let's stop there for a minute. Let's break that down. Okay, so what she's saying basically is in the idea of a free market economy too, right? That it's violent because competition is violent. So what she's saying, where competition really breeds excellence. You take competition out, then we do not continue to grow like we've grown over the last couple hundred years. Competition is actually a very good thing, and I see we take that out of our youth sports as well anymore, especially when they're little. We don't have winners and losers. We just everybody wins, everybody gets a trophy, and that's really bogus, man. Because all we're doing is preparing them to just be themselves and not push themselves, not compete. Now, I'm not saying that we compete at everything. We have to be mature about it. Stoic is the word I like to use here. But we need to be wise and responsible in our competitions. And I'm not saying we be cutthroat. We have to have ethics in there. Therefore, when we would lay out a Judean Christian free market economy like we had here in the United States for 200 years, you lay out nearly the perfect formula. The only problem is that it's governed by man, right? So when it's governed by the Lord, when he takes his seat in Zion, then you'll begin to see a perfect government and a perfect economy, if you will. Now, will we as people run that machine perfectly? I doubt that. But the system will be set up right, and it will be very just because everybody under that tent of Zion, I'm not talking about in the stakes of Zion, because that's not the promise that was there. Could be, but I don't see how it can be. But under the tent of Zion, because everybody's uniting right now under that constitution, as Brigham Young said, would be the filter. And that brings everybody to one united togetherness. That brings back the masses, the people that we're going to need to come together with to be able to fight this big machine that she's laying out right now. And that's the fear that's going to be, she's going to lay out here is if you do not come together and accept this whole climate change 2030 agenda, right? She's putting it out there. She's laying it there like, oh, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy, right? But at the same time, what she's offering is, hey, we need to come together, be unified, and we need to be willing to make all these sacrifices. The only way we unify is by giving up what we fight for. And we're doing that as a society and as a church. And for that consequence, we're being overrun, as Lehi said would happen to us. Book of Mormon prophesied of this more than one occasion. What's taking place to us today. So what she's laying out here as good, clean competition. Now, we have who she's showing here, though, right? Walmart, McDonald's, you got the gas industry, Amazon, with dollar being king. You got the hippie movement there. I like that she got that in now, but I don't know if that's her necessarily or that's the actual artist drawing and putting in his interpretations of what she's saying. Because I don't think she's calling this out. You even got 5G in there. The artistry details everything is taking place right now. And that's what's upon us now, right? The chaos does come when you have these corporate greed that are involved with the government, which is really fascism at the end of the day, which is a new style and type of fascism. But that entails the picture what we're seeing right now. Okay, so if she's meaning that, great. But if you listen to the rest, I don't think she's quite meaning that. Let's go ahead, Walter, carry on so we can finish this.
Why are we building detention centers everywhere in India, along the border of Mexico? Because I feel that if we don't activate our sense of interconnectedness with all life, with all people, if we don't start sowing the seeds of what I have called earth democracy, we are going to see 99% people as disposable, especially with the tech working on artificial intelligence, to make sure all the mechanical work is made redundant, whether it be in radiography or law or whatever. Mechanical work will be substituted. And if that's the case, 99% people are disposable. So you can either share this beautiful planet with love and abundance and sustainability, or say it's all mine, every bit of land, every seed,
Stop.
every
Let's stop.
mind, because what's being mined.
See, what's been mined is not yours, it's ours, right? So gold, silver is not yours, it's ours. And then she goes into the whole idea of sustainability. So she had to throw in, we all can live together and live under sustainability. So that's the whole sustainability goals. That's the ESG. That's what BlackRock's pushing all these companies to fall in line with. You remember the whole Bud Light fiasco, that whole thing that took place there? Well, that's falling in line with the whole ESG woke agenda, right? And this is what she's portraying. So you see, we become disposable, and maybe even disposable as into concentration camps, etc., right? Even to death, because human life is not valued by these people. And I can tell you from my experience in living in Latin America, in dealing with cartels to the level, at least that we had to deal with them and to coexist and live around them, especially in Costa Rica, they don't think anything about life. The death that I was able to be around, it was incredible. It's just nothing to shoot somebody. It's just another carnage that needs to be just disposed of because they think they're better than one, right? And that's a very true fact. However, here's the hope on all this. Here's the promise on all this. And I really need to sit down. I really hope I can sit down to do a lot of these things I want to do and I talk about doing here. And I will, but it's just, look, just a side note, just we got this business. We came back from living in South America. We got wiped out by the whole, sickness thing. I got to be careful what I say here because I get in trouble here, or I got slapped by YouTube once for just saying something. I wasn't even passionate on it. But I had to go back into starting a business that I had retired from, just because I put everything down there and the Amazon jungle and to doing these Book of Mormon tours and these jungle tours and sport fishing, and there it sits right now, right? And so I've had to come back and do other things again. And it's been tough. And so it's made it to where I can't finish my studios and get things to the level I want them at yet. It's been frustrating. And every time I try to get ahead, my house, the vehicle, something else just sucks of what I had put aside to do this stuff with right out. However, I have faith and hope that we keep pushing away, then the doors will open for us. Now, hey, let's go back to what our topic is here. Enough of me crying over spilled milk here. Zion will offer the unity that we're talking about. Zion will offer the numbers that we're talking about. I'm talking about the tent of Zion. I'm not talking about the stakes of Zion. Stakes of Zion will not hardly play any role in what I'm speaking of right now. The gathering of the tent of Zion would be determined by the constitution of both members and non-members. That's the gathering, see, of the tent. The stakes of Zion are those who are willing to come under the covenant of baptism. Very different. So the constitution is going to be defended where? Under the tent of Zion. Well, that's forming right now, my friends. That's forming right now. If we just look at it, what's filtering right now between red and blue is the U.S. Constitution. What's causing people to go red in red states and defend that red and defend that Constitution is the Constitution, right? It's that idea of freedom of many different races, colors, sex, creed, and even religions, if you will. That's the way Brigham Young said it most likely would be. Joseph said it. Brigham expounded upon it years later. We need to go into that, dig deep into those. So, what she's going to call it democracy, we really don't need to care about democracy. China claims democracy. Cuba claims democracy. Venezuela claims to be a democratic nation state. Democracy is gullible. Democracy is easy to persuade or buy the people to vote. It's the republic where the power is in the people, not in the government, where the people can go to the actual capital and express themselves in ways that you try to actually persuade your government. But the people have a right at some point, and I got to be careful here, right? Because if I go and say this right now, then I can be one of these disposables. And this is the problem. So we do what we can do. And we got to push that envelope a little bit and take those risks. But I think everybody here knows the Constitution and what that Constitution gives us a right as a republic to do. We, the people, need to control and rule the government, not the government rule the people. That's democracy. A republic's the other way around. And we have given our republic up with a thunderous applause, quoting from Padme Amidala from Star Wars 3. This is how freedom is lost, with thunderous applause. We have given that idea up for democracy, and that's been fooling us. It's been a tool to fool us and to actually bring us, to trip us up and pull us off balance. Now, it's funny because I played a little bit in Aikido, and I love the Aikido. I'm not very good at it, but I love the fact that in Aikido, a lot of things you do, a lot of moves you're doing, you just pull the person off their center line, just a little off balance, and you can manipulate their body completely for that moment that you can keep off balance. So everything in it that I had learned was related to pulling them off balance. Now, without pulling yourself off balance or being outmaneuvered by somebody stronger than you, right? So there's ways to do it where you're using their force against themselves, pulling that center line just off balance enough to where you can manipulate their body into all this kinesiology, how it moves, and actually pin or cause pain to put somebody in a locked position where you can escape or get away. I like that idea. Everything moves, right? It all gets, you hit some point, pull off balance, and you are easily manipulated. It's the same thing happening to us today. We're being tripped off balance both in and out of the church, and we're being manipulated. And I think that I personally feel we're fumbling the ball a lot with a lot of our leaders right now in the church, because they're being caught up in this whole democracy idea, this whole quantum theory idea of this teddy bear Jesus of all inclusiveness. Now, we heard Elder Cook talking in general conference, said, look, hey, yeah, everybody's invited, but it doesn't mean that you just stay that way. You need to live the standard. And we as a church are not even talking about the standard anymore. We're kind of backed away from it a lot, just trying to kind of make commandments principles now. We just kind of fill the principles to live in that standard, that commandment. The Lord's going to correct that. And there's a reason for it. I think we're fumbling a little bit right now, but I know the Book of Mormon's true. I know our leaders are called of God, and I know our leaders have their own opinions and their own agendas, and they think certain ways. And my dealings with these leaders in the past is sometimes they just need to be called out by the people and said, hey, what about these doctrines that we were taught before, right? And we do need to know those doctrines before. I already get irritated. Say, we don't need to know that stuff. Well, if we don't need to know it, then why do we keep it? Why don't we just throw it all away? We need to know it because over time, as Elder Oaks taught, doctrines are taught by the general authorities of the church. So it takes time. We got to go back and look at all the different talks to establish whether that's doctrine or opinion today. And I'm sorry, but a lot of opinion is taught at the pulpit, and you can find talks on that by the same general authorities saying, hey, not everything that's taught here is doctrine. There's a lot of well-intended opinion here. Well-intended. Listen to it. But it doesn't mean it's right, and it doesn't make it doctrine. In my church, my ward, we sit around and talk about every church talk as if it's doctrine. In fact, I heard one quoted on Sunday, visiting a different ward, from a 70 general authority that I worked with during the lockdowns. And I personally know that he is missing a lot in understanding the church doctrine. Very tyrannical approach to things during the whole process of the jab and so forth. And he and my stake president and myself went back and forth on a few occasions. And they even came to a point where they said, we were wrong on that. That's not what the Lord wants. Thanks for bringing that to attention. We went back, and the Lord doesn't want us to do this now. So they fumbled the ball. They made mistakes. And so you just have to accept that, get over that, and accept that they don't have a crystal ball. They're going to do the best they can do, but we also have to do our homework. We can't just go along and conform. If we just conform, that kills our desires to want to become our potentials. And that's a true fact. Let's finish this video. Walter, go ahead.
Is our mind now. And if we don't defend the freedoms of all species and the freedoms of all human beings, we could see within 20, 30 years, a level of disposability built into the structures that humanity will not be able to respond to. So this is the time to make oneness and interconnectedness as one humanity on one planet the political project of our times.
So you're going to repeat
We
it again.
have to remember we are one humanity. We are part of one earth. And whatever we do, we will not let this basic recognition divide us, either from the earth or from each other. And together we are strong.
Okay, Walter, let's stop that. Now, what I like about that last part is the fear in that. Look how it mirrors and how Satan mirrors what we're being currently taught right now in the church as well. That we all need to get along. We all need to love one another. We need to be one. We can't be divided. We need to be united. That's a true principle, right? But look at also how society takes the Christian teachings and uses that to lead Christians and Christianity down a wrong path. In other words, if you're not stoic, we're not stoic about these doctrines, these principles that we live, and we allow this form of coercive government. And I'm going to use coercive in a strong way, but they do it through this persuasive technique. They hold us, they coerce us, and they obligate us, and then at the same time they persuade us by lying to us. So not persuading on its true basis merits of persuasion, right? Where we get to choose, we see everything, the facts laid out. They lay out one side of facts, or should say, they lay out their story, which most of it's not true, and that is what you're given and you're told to receive. And if not, then shame on you. Or even if you go too far to rebel against that, then you are a problem to society. Now, where are we going to escape this at? Where do we think this at? Look at Nikola Tesla says here. Though free to think and act, we are held together like stars in the firmament with ties inseparable. These guys cannot be seen, but we can feel them. We are all one. One earth. Hey, is all this stuff reason? Or should say, it almost wants to reason in my soul, like, hey, this should have a point. And you can almost say, well, maybe we do need to abandon these extreme LDS mooring lines, if you will, or even extreme Christian. Like, for example, well, maybe we should give in to let people have complete freedom of their body, and then abortion, we shouldn't stand up for that, right? We shouldn't even stand up against anything as LGBTQ. We should just allow that to take place, let them be sealed in the temple, and let God figure it out in the end, right? That's the way that they want us to go. That's the way they're going to take our religion from us, is by convenience and complacency, is by a bleeding heart, is by not being stoic in our religious beliefs and practices. Well, courageous conviction. Put your comments down below, please. Like, subscribe. Let me know what you think. What are your thoughts on this video and what I just explained? See you in the next video.